The streets of Marrowlight were never truly dark. Oil lamps burned in wrought iron cages, and glass spheres filled with cold phosphor dangled from balconies like pale moons. Yet every citizen understood that the real danger began when the visible lights came on. For once, the sun slid behind the saw-toothed mountains. Every person's shadow loosened like the knot of a tired scarf. And when the first bell of night tolled, those shadows tore free, drifting from walls and cobblestones to begin secret lives of their own. Children were taught the rule before they could read. At dusk, lock the doors and shutter the mirrors. At dawn, greet your shadow as though you've missed it. The rhyme sounded harmless, but no one forgot the half-year when the binding teams failed to catch every wayward umbra, and 5 neighborhoods awoke colorless, buildings transparent as breath. Reality, the scholars said, had begun to unravel, threads plucked from the loom of existence. It took 6 months and an entire generation of shadow hunters to weave the city's substance back in. Leora, youngest journeyman of the Iron Gnomon Guild, knew those lessons by heart. She had memorized the bind knots, the mirrored sigils, the cadence of the shackling litany. What she lacked was field experience. Tonight would change that, if she succeeded. She stood on the roof of the Lornspire clock tower, biting her lip, while city bells clanged the second hour past sunset. Below, the market quarter lay drained of civilians, only candle stubs flickering in shuttered windows. Across the rooftops, Harlan Vetch, her mentor, strode with lazy equilibrium, balancing along roof tiles as if they were a flat boulevard. He was a wide-shouldered man, whose own shadow, now absent, normally stretched like a dagger at his heels. "Listen," he said, cocking his head. The city air was still, but a low susurration gathered, like leaves rustling in a courtyard without trees. The preamble, Leora guessed. Correct. Shadows gossip before they play. Every whisper is a plan to misbehave. She tightened the leather strap that bound her mirror kite to her back. The kite was a lattice of silver rods webbed with reflective film, designed to scoop stray darkness the way fishermen netted trout. Gnomon forges could shape mirrors sharp enough to cut an idea in half. Every hunter carried at least one. Harlan tossed her a vial of quicksilver. Slip that into the kite's heart. It'll make the reflections hungry. Leora obeyed, thumb working the cork, but her gaze drifted eastward, toward the Baron's keep, where a single window still glowed gold. He's late, she muttered. Baron Astride is never late for a banquet, only for his responsibilities, Harlan said. His shadow has grown bored of waiting for permission. Tonight, it intends a coup. Leora had studied the Baron's silhouette in the archives. An immense cloak, hat brim like a crescent blade. The scrolls claimed the shadow could stretch across an entire street at noon. If we can't bind it before dawn, she said, the keep's walls may dissolve into hourglass dust. Or worse, Harlan warned, voice soft. Powerful shadows learn to prey on others. The Baron's umbra could swallow 20 smaller ones, grow twice again, and by morning every subject in his ward would wake a ghost. A ripple of cold fluttered around her boots. Leora glanced down. A ribbon of darkness unspooled across the tiles, edging toward the gutter. Someone's shadow, newly freed, sneaking away. Without command, Harlan knelt, pressing 2 fingers to the roof. A sigil of polished steel in his palm glimmered. The creeping shadow froze mid-slither. It curled, glared up with eyes that were only deeper dimness, and hissed. Harlan snapped a binding knot, and like a sheet yanked by wind, the shadow folded into a compact black square, which he stuffed into a lantern jar. "Apprentice's catch," he said, tossing the jar. Leora fumbled, caught it, felt the jar buzz in her gloves. A tiny flicker of triumphant fear danced in her chest. First, live capture of the night, maybe of her life. They descended a fire escape ladder to the empty alley. Every surface around them was illuminated. Lamplight on windowsills, lanterns hung from hooks. Yet each light birthed its own absence, and those absences were gradually slipping free. She could almost see the thresholds where shadows parted from owners, like skin peeling from fruit. A thump echoed from behind a butcher's stall. Two silhouettes scuffled, one tall and fork-tailed, the other squat with exaggerated fists. Their owners must have argued earlier that day. Now the Umbras fought on, reenacting grievances. The hunters ignored them. Minor disputes could be swept later. Tonight, their priority was the Baron. They hurried along back streets until the keep's black stone wall loomed above them. A gate of tarnished bronze stood ajar. Inside the courtyard, the gas lamps were shattered, glass crunching under Harlan's boots. Moonlight alone painted the gravel with pale luster, and in that cool glow, a single enormous silhouette stretched from the keep doors, idling like a draft horse. Baron's shadow, Harlan confirmed. Leora exhaled. It was magnificent. Twice the height recorded, draped in jagged cloak wings, head crowned with spikes of negative space. The real Baron, she knew, was an anxious, balding man with shoulder ache. His shadow looked like something a conqueror might ride into battle. The Umbra lifted its head, as though sniffing, though it had no nostrils, no physical form. When it spoke, the voice was not sound, but vibration inside Leora's bones. "I am not to be caged." Harlan stepped forward, hand extended. "Good evening, your potent darkness. We are guardians of the weave. Dawn is not yet, but already you stretch truth thin. You should return." The shadow's laugh was wind swirling in a hollow tower. "The Baron's thinness chafes me. I'll wear the city instead." Leora's pulse hammered. She reached for her mirror kite. Harlan unhooked twin mirror discs from his belt, flipping them to reflect moonlight in strobes. The shadow recoiled. In the glass, its outline trembled, revealing ragged holes where star dots glimmered. Unstable, she realized. If it wasn't bound soon, it might rift the whole courtyard. The game was simple in rule, lethal in practice. Hunters needed to surround the target with reflective surfaces, containing it long enough to recite the shackling litany and weave 7 silver knots. Shadows, however, could seep between cobblestones, leap into nostrils, or swallow light entire. At least Harlan and Leora had the advantage of teamwork. Most runaways despised cooperating with fellow Umbras. Not this one. As Harlan advanced, a dozen minor silhouettes emerged from cracks and flower beds, drawn like orbiting moons. The Baron's shade had already begun feeding, hoarding mass. "Scatter mirrors, flank left," Harlan ordered. Leora sprinted, unspooling kite struts so it expanded, like metallic wings. She jammed one spar into the gravel, angled reflective film toward the shadow. Light reflected, fracturing the courtyard into shards of moon. The Baron's umbra jerked, buffeted by its own multiplied image. Harlan hurled a mirror disc to the opposite side. 2 reflections now carved boundaries. Leora dashed to plant a third, then a fourth, each edge angled meticulously. They were building a cage of light. The minor shadows attempted escape, but every time one lunged, it slammed into a mirrored wall and rebounded squealing. The Baron's silhouette swelled, forced away from the keep doors. Its cloak wings unfurled, claws scraping intangible sparks from the air. Leora poised over her final stake. She had to drive it precisely, seal the pentagon. She crouched, hammer raised. A figure tripped from the keep. The real Baron astride, nightgown flapping, hair in feathery tufts. "What is this, ruckus?" he cried, eyes wide as saucers. His gaze fell on Leora. "You there. Stop damaging my courtyard." The disturbance broke her rhythm. The hammer missed the stake, clanged her ankle. Pain shot up her leg. She cursed. Mirrors shivered, not yet aligned. The umbra licked the distraction like honey. It surged, cloak lashing, smashing one mirror aside. Glass exploded. A shockwave of ink spattered the ground, leaving holes where gravel ceased to exist. Leora screamed as her left boot hung over void, a disk of nothingness the size of a dinner plate. Harlan dragged her clear. "Back!" he shouted to the Baron. "Get inside before your negligence kills us all." But the Baron gaped at his own rampant shadow. "Oh, heavens!" he whimpered, retreating behind a toppled urn. The void holes stitched themselves into a new limb for the shadow. It grew a lance arm, aimed at Harlan. He parried with mirror disc, yet the force flung him backward. Leora's lungs burned. She was the junior, yes, but she had sworn the vow, no darkness without tether. If Harlan fell, the cage collapsed, and the city soon after. She gritted her teeth and limped toward the shattered mirror. Around her belt hung vials of quicksilver and one emergency sunspark. Illegal for apprentices to deploy without supervision, but Harlan could hardly supervise while sprawled unconscious. The shadow lunged again, this time at her. She rolled aside, pain screaming through ankle. The lance punched earth, carving a fresh void trench. Cosmic chill radiated. She glimpsed swirling galaxies inside the gouge, as though space itself peeked through a torn sheet. Her fingers found the sunspark, a crystalline seed storing captured dawnlight. Used too early, and she risked obliterating every shadow, even the harmless ones destined to rejoin their hosts. Used too late, and there'd be no city left to protect. Leora breathed. The second rule of hunting. Shadows fear only their own hunger. Feed them something too bright, they retreat to survive. She hurled the spark high. Mid-air, the crystal shattered, birthing a sphere of rosy pre-dawn radiance. It was not true sunlight, only a memory of it. But shadows recoiled as if scalded. The Baron's umbra shrank, cloak curling inward. Minor shades fled into cracks. Meanwhile, Harlan stirred, blood at his temple. He saw the false sun and groaned. "Bold move," he croaked. 15 seconds before it fades. "Rerouting mirrors," she said. Together they repositioned surviving reflectors, so the spark's blush bounced between them, intensifying. Light washed the courtyard, painting statues pink. Within the cage, the Baron's shadow wavered, cloak shedding drips of blackness like sweat. It tried to split into smaller fragments to squeeze out, but the mirrors had metastasized into seamless prismatic walls. 10 seconds. Harlan began the shackling litany, voice ragged, by twins of night and day, by weave of cloth and seam. Leora joined, harmonizing the response. "We bind you not to slay, but guide you back to dream." She limped around the cage, pulling silver cord from her satchel, knotting pattern 1 through 4. Each knot glimmered, lashing to mirror corners. The shadow roared, lance arm dissolving under synthetic sunrise, cloak shredding into moth wings of soot. 5 seconds. Harlan's voice grew stronger. "By dawn yet unbeheld, return, restore, renew." Leora tightened knot. 5, 6, 7, completing the ring. The mirrors fused at edges, forming a geometric prison. Light from the spark collapsed inward, a tidal pull. The Baron's umbra howled, contorting, sucked toward the cord lattice. It tried one last gambit, detaching its own crown of spikes and flinging them like javelins. 2 mirrors cracked but held. Then the sun spark winked out. Darkness rushed, but the cage glowed platinum, sustained by the completed knots. The shadow was gone, or rather compressed into a mirror sliver within the central kite. Its mass dimmed, now a slender glyph, no larger than a handprint. Silence layered over the courtyard. Real moonlight returned, gentle, patient. No void holes remained. Gravel re-stitched itself, time reversing the erasure. Leora sank to knees, trembling. We did it. Harlan knelt beside, clasping her shoulder. You did. I was a bludgeon. You were the needle. He turned to the Baron, who peeked from hiding. Now, my lord, kindly step forward so we can restore what belongs to you. The Baron waddled, eyes fixed on the trapped glyph with a mix of awe and terror. It looks smaller. It will regrow once reintegrated, Leora explained. Think of it like folding a map before slipping it in a pocket. She touched the mirror's edge to the Baron's chest. A whisper of black ribbon flowed from prism to his heart, spreading down with each exhale. Within seconds, his natural shadow reseated on the ground behind him, meek and properly flat. Oh, he gasped. I feel whole and terribly tired. That's guilt, Harlan said sharply. Remember it tomorrow when the guild invoices the damages. Leora's ankle throbbed. Adrenaline ebbed, leaving exhaustion. But the night was not over. Many hours until dawn, countless lesser shadows still at play. She rubbed her jaw. We'll need to call junior teams for cleanup. Harlan produced a brass whistle, blew a pattern. From neighboring rooftops, silhouettes of other hunters emerged. Teams always waited within earshot of the first strike, but held back until primary threat neutralized. They swung down on ropes, mirrors clinking. While they divided tasks, the Baron was escorted indoors by a steward. Leora perched on the courtyard well, wrapping ankle with gauze. She studied the sky. No visible tears in starlight, for now. Harlan joined her with 2 steaming cups of chicory. Drink. Medicinal only in the sense that it keeps eyelids open. She sipped, grimaced. Tastes like roasted chalk. Accurate. He leaned back. You improvised with forbidden ordnance and saved my life. Expect both commendation and reprimand at sunrise. I'll etch them beside each other on my certificate. She managed a smile. A pause. Somewhere, a hunter shouted triumph, followed by the sound of a glass jar snapping shut. Another umbra captured. Harlan's voice went low. There's something I didn't put in the brief. Baron's shadow had help. We found sigils on his study walls, coaxing it with promises. Marks of the Umbra Court. The name chilled her. The Umbra Court was rumor among apprentices, a clandestine cabal of humans who envied their freer halves, plotting to sever all shadows permanently. She frowned. I thought they were bedtime tales. Tales grow teeth when ignored. I fear they're grooming a figurehead. Baron might have been first attempt. They want reality to unravel, or to reweave it under their design. Same outcome for anyone not on their ledger. Leora stared into her cup, watching ripples darken. She suddenly recalled the small shadow in her jar, the first capture of the night. It still wriggled in her satchel. She pulled it free, peered inside. The square umbra stared back, eyes twin pinpricks. Do they seduce all shadows with the same lie? She wondered aloud. Promise the world outside chains. Freedom is a seductive word when you're a prisoner of physics. She thought of her own shadow, presently adventuring who knew where. Occasionally, before sleep, she imagined asking it about its nightly escapades. Did it envy her, or she it? Did it resent being forced back each dawn? She replaced the jar, tightening the lid. We can't keep winning by force. Force is all we have until they learn the consequences. Harlan sighed. But perhaps someday, a wiser generation will find harmony. A hunter waved from the gate, perimeter secure. Only routine sweep remained. Clouds drifted across the moon, scoring the courtyard with sliding panes of darkness and light. Leora watched one such pane drift over her boots. It stuck longer than expected, stretching thin like taffy before snapping free and scampering under a hedge. A tiny rebel. She laughed softly. Good luck, little one. Hunters are everywhere tonight. Then she rose, fastening cloak. Ready for the next ward? Harlan hefted his mirror staff. Lead on, journeyman. They marched from the courtyard into silent streets, where lamps flickered and shadows danced, always plotting escape. And until the world learned a different balance, people like Leora would pursue, bind, and guide them home before dawn, so that reality's weave, though frayed, might hold one more day.